Heyo, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk about this interesting challenge that I have been doing where I and some friends are trying to read through the entire Bible in the month of January. So that's been interesting. And at first, I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. I agreed to do it because I was like, sure, why not? But I was a little confused, like what you're supposed to get out of it. I was like, how can you get anything out of this if you're literally just racing through the entire thing so quickly? But the leader of the group sent out a little message at the beginning that was kind of talking about ways to make this doable. And she emphasized that the main thing is to get a big picture perspective of the Bible. You're not trying to read through it the way you normally do, slowly verse by verse and looking for something to learn and really digging deeper into one verse. And while it feels a little bit frustrating to like rush past all of these nuggets of gold because I don't have time to like really mine them out, it has been very interesting thinking of reading it that way. And I think it has been very helpful to get that big picture perspective. And it's definitely very different from how I've read the Bible before, but I think different is good. I've had years and years to read the Bible the normal way, and I think it's very interesting and enlightening to me to be reading it in this new rushed way. And so I don't know, I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that I've noticed from that or gleaned from doing it in this way. And I also wanted to say I'm so proud of myself because I think back to little baby Coriel, who was so upset about having to read one chapter every single day and how it always felt like such a chore and like took so much time and effort, and now I'm reading like 30 chapters a day and it's fine. So the Lord has grown and matured my attention span. So at first it was honestly kind of difficult for me because I have read the Old Testament with a good perspective before, and I have seen Jesus in some very surprising places, even found some prophecies about him that, or what I would consider prophecies or pointers towards him that I had never really noticed there before, and just gained a lot of insight and seen a lot of parallels to the new covenant that Jesus lays out for us. And I remember we were going through Genesis with the Bible study, and I was so amazed because I was like, wow, everyone says the God of the Old Testament feels so different from Jesus. You know, the God of the Old Testament is all fire and brimstone and wrath, and Jesus is all like loving and forgiving and like everybody come to me and all about grace. And it just seems like this really weird dichotomy that like God changed and is someone different, and who he is now and the ways that we deal with him now are so completely different from the way that he used to be, which I know is not true. And so it was really interesting going through Genesis because I felt like I was seeing all the ways that it is the same God, and I was seeing the same heart and him treating us the same in some surprising ways that I hadn't really noticed before. Anyway, all that to say, I have read it with a good perspective before, but this time through, just rushing through, not having the time to sit through and think about things and just skimming the surface, I was like, yep, I see why people don't like to read the Old Testament, or why they feel like God was all mean and judgmental and just wanting to kill everybody back then. And honestly, that made me a little bit depressed because I was already wrestling with these prayers that he just was not answering and these ways that he was literally just not responding to me. And just, I was struggling a lot, felt like he wasn't really taking care of me. And then reading all this stuff that gave me this incorrect perspective on God, but it's so easy to read it that way if you aren't digging deeper and trying to understand. And so at first it was kind of discouraging for me. I was like, I don't know about this. Like, I know this is not true, but it's so hard. But one of the things that I would say I have learned from reading it so quickly is that I do believe that he is the same God. And I think we just in general tend to interpret God in light of our circumstances when really we need to be interpreting our circumstances in light of God. And so that was what I was doing, was really just reading a quick overview and drawing conclusions about who God must be based on how these things appeared to me, which on the one hand, like, what else are you supposed to do? But on the other, like, I know that God has said like he is the same yesterday and today and forever, so I know that that must be true. And so as much as it might seem like he is bipolar, he must be the same God in the Old Testament. He must be treating people with the same kind of love that he offers us today in the New Covenant, and his heart for us must still be the same, and he must desire relationship to the same extent that I see in the New Testament. And so that was just a really good reminder that I can't, whether in reading the Bible or literally just in my life, I can't interpret God through the lens of my own perspective and what I'm going through. I really need to see my circumstances in light of who God is. And I feel like I was able to do that a little further on once I realized that my perspective was wrong and that I was struggling and falling into the trap of seeing God in that light. And then the second thing that I found interesting is that I feel like just from this bigger picture perspective of the Bible, I almost feel like I'm starting over and learning who God is right at the beginning, all the way up, all the way across history, all the way until the end of the New Testament. It's felt like if I read it with new eyes, and I feel like I have been able to a little bit, I'm seeing this slow progression of revelation of who God is. Not that his character is changing, but that he is slowly and steadily revealing who he is. And if I read it with those new eyes, forgetting that I know everything that comes ahead, but just focusing on the information that I have at the moment and trying to think about how the other nations all around the Israelites interacted with their gods and understood the relationship between gods and humans and the things that they would have expected. Very interesting, because I feel like slowly God is breaking that down and showing himself to be so different. Even back in Genesis, just all of these times where he surprises us with who he is. When if we were just a normal random Bob walking around living our life, worshiping our God and sacrificing to him, we would be so surprised and so just like blown away. And where did that come from in interacting with God in the Old Testament? Because he is so different and so loving and so in search of a relationship with people, which is very different from all of the gods around them that the Israelites were running to go serve. And so I feel like it's just so interesting, and seeing him slowly reveal himself, slowly be so surprising, really sets the stage for later as we learn across the Bible how much he's willing to give up for us and how much he loves us, all the way leading up to the ultimate sacrifice of sending his son to die for us, which no one would have ever seen coming. And so I feel like reading the whole story and focusing on that, I'm able to let myself get caught up in the progression, in the revelation of God's character, and be newly surprised by each way that he reveals himself. It's so beautiful and surprising. He chooses his people. Natasha was pointing out to me, she took a Torah class and she found it so fascinating, but one of the things that they pointed out to her that she found really interesting was when God then established the tabernacle to say, I am not just a God confined to this one little space, and if you live in this space, you're under my jurisdiction. If you step out of it, that's the dominion of the other gods. You need to serve them. No, I'm a God that goes with you. I have dominion everywhere. And his presence followed them and went with them. And so he wasn't just confined or stationary. He could choose to come down to them. He chose to walk with them and to show his authority and dominion over all of the other gods, which is just a like, what? Oh, that's different. And then all of the times where he is justly ready to destroy the Israelites for their sin, and Moses says, oh, please don't, and God is like, okay. It's like, whoa, he really is slow to anger and abounding in loving kindness. He's so ready to show mercy. As much as he is just and wants to punish the sin, and rightfully so, he's so ready to be merciful. Abraham bargained with God for Sodom and Gomorrah, which breaks my heart, because even though he got it down to like 5 people, they still didn't even have that many. It was Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. So that's 4 righteous people. So God destroyed the city. And that was just like so sad, because he got the bar so low, and then there wasn't even one person outside of Lot's immediate family, like not even the fiancés of his daughters, that was holy and righteous and wanted to believe the Lord. Which is so sad. It says a lot about Lot should have been doing a little better over there, not adapting to the culture and making the culture adapt to him. But anyway, and so he's so ready to show mercy and be gracious, when normally that is not how the gods would have interacted with people. That is not the way that any of the people around them understood their gods to be. And then just later, all these times he's so focused on preserving a remnant, and so many times he withholds his wrath because he's not willing to break his promise to David that his son will sit on the throne and his line will carry on. We see the faithfulness of God throughout the Bible is slowly revealed. And also another thing I learned is just the faithlessness of man, that literally, like through the kings, one generation to another, the father could be good and the son could be totally completely wicked.